To order. Welcome to meeting number 126 of the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. Reminder to all members before we start the meeting, I want to remind you all to read the best practices guidelines and the cards on the table. These measures are in place to protect the health and safety of our participants, most notably our translators, our traducteurs et traductrices that we have in the back over there. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. General comments, I'd like to remind all participants of the following. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. All comments should be addressed through the chair. Members, please raise your hand if you wish to speak, whether participating in person or via Zoom. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Friday, September 6, 2024, the committee is commencing its study of passenger rail service Via Rail Canada incident on August 31st, 2024. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. De Via Rail Canada, nous avons Monsieur Mario Péloquin, Président.
Via Rail Canada, we have Mario Péloquin, President and Chief Executive Officer, Rita Toporowski, Chief Service Delivery Officer, and Denis Lavoie, General Counsel. Welcome, everyone, to our committee. Up to 5 minutes will be given for opening remarks, after which we will proceed with rounds of questions. Welcome. I now invite you to make your opening statements. Thank you. Dear committee members, I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. Although I wish it were under different circumstances, I recognize that it is absolutely necessary for me to be here today to revisit the regrettable incident involving train 622 on August 31st. My first words today are addressed to those who unfortunately spent too many hours on board this immobilized train. I'm deeply sorry for what happened and offer my sincerest apologies to all of them. On behalf of Via Rail's management and board of directors, I can confirm that one word sums up what happened on August 31st. Unacceptable. As the fourth generation of my family to work in the railway sector, trains are in my blood. This summer marked my 40th anniversary in the industry. It's a great honor to work for Via Rail, and I want Canadians to continue to have confidence in our trains. Our values put passengers at the heart of our decisions. But it's clear that on August 31st, we didn't live up to them. Via Rail has therefore commissioned an independent investigation to get to the bottom of what happened. Once we have the report of this investigation, we will carry out an in-depth review of our emergency management action plan to ensure that such a situation does not happen again. I am committed to ensuring that all shortcomings are identified and corrected quickly. But to avoid waiting, I have also put in place corrective measures so that we can immediately better meet Canadians' legitimate expectations of Via Rail services.
The Quebec-Windsor corridor is affected by a mechanical breakdown or any other situation likely to cause a significant delay. We will assess the situation in real time and implement an evacuation procedure if feasible. Secondly, I've asked for an immediate review of the training requirements, in particular to ensure that all employees are better equipped for difficult situations. Thirdly, we will be revising our communications protocol with Transport Canada officials to enable a more rapid exchange in the event of major issues. And finally, we want to examine exactly what led to this unfortunate situation for our passengers. While we're proud of our new fleet of trains in the Quebec-Windsor corridor and confident about the reliability of this new equipment, we are conducting a comprehensive assessment. It would therefore be premature and unwise at this stage to speculate on the root causes of the mechanical failures that affected train 622, although we know now that it was not a single failure, but a series of events. Unfortunately, the breakdown of 2 weeks ago reminds us of what happened in December 2022. While Via Rail successfully implemented the key learnings and recommendations from 2022, this most recent incident revealed significant shortcomings, which we are addressing. I want to reiterate that I'm deeply sorry for what happened and offer my sincere apologies to all passengers on board Train 622 and their families. On behalf of Via Rail management and the Board of Directors, I can confirm that one word sums up what happened on August 31st: unacceptable. Notre seule raison d'être est de servir nos passagers.
Our sole raison d'être is to serve our passengers. They are at the heart of everything we do at Via Rail. This was clearly not the case on August 31st aboard Train 622. Once again, I would like to say this was a serious lesson whose causes and consequences will be analyzed scrupulously to make Via Rail a carrier that lives up to our customers' expectations. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament, it will now be my pleasure to answer your questions along with my colleagues, Rita Toporowski, our Chief Service Delivery Officer, and Denis Lavoie, who is in charge of launching the independent investigation into this incident. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Péloquin. We'll start off today with Mr. Berthold. Mr. Berthold, you have the floor. You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chiefke. Good afternoon, witnesses, and we appreciate your apologies. Thank you for them. I think that the passengers deserved those public apologies, but I have to admit that while you were giving your speech, I had shivers sent down my spine. You said that what happened on August 31st wasn't related to one event, but a series of events that happened at the same time. And that leaves a tragic, a sour taste in my mouth where I remember what happened in Lac Mégantic, where there was a series of incidents and mechanical failures, and 47 people died as a result. So I just wanted to say that I wanted to share that emotion with you right now. I wasn't going to talk about that, but I was triggered by what you said in that way. And incidents can happen when trains transport passengers. Trains can kill hundreds of people if they break down. So I find that unacceptable is actually weak when you describe incidents like that. And in terms of answering the question of what happened, Mr. Péloquin, I have a question for you. You said that there's going to be a new communications protocol with Transport Canada. How has the event that occurred in 2022 served as a lesson learned for Via Rail, and how will a new protocol help? Whereas it seemed like the communications between Transport Canada and Via Rail in 2022 had no incidents on new security protocols. Thank you for the question. The 2022 incident and the investigation afterward helped us improve multiple aspects of our procedures and protocols in Via Rail. This includes the communications protocol within Via Rail internally, but also our communications protocol with the department. What happened on August 31st of this year, even though measures had been implemented in 2022, showed us that there were still gaps. And that is why we have implemented measures immediately to fill those gaps quickly. And also we've launched a special independent investigation to identify other shortcomings that we may have missed. 2 years, over 2 years, and you still haven't reached anything efficient. Mr. Péloquin, this didn't come out of nowhere, out of thin air. It happened right on the side of Highway 20, where there were buses, where there were towns, where there some certain things could have done instead of stranding hundreds of people on a train for 10 hours. This is beyond unacceptable, Mr. Péloquin. I've seen comments from the minister. He said it was unacceptable. What did the minister's office tell you first and foremost? Who started who opened the line of communication between his office and Via Rail? According to our protocol, we follow a procedure when we realize that there's something that happens that's outside the norm, that's abnormal. On August 31st, internal communications were lacking. The minister's office and the deputy minister and the board of directors had communications around 6:50. And when did you have those talks with the minister himself? Have you spoken with Minister Rodriguez? Yes, I spoke with Minister Rodriguez or former Minister Rodriguez, the Tuesday following the event. Inaudible. Yes, that was the Tuesday at the start of the afternoon. For the minister didn't believe this was such a major incident, right? I'm not, unfortunately, able to comment on his assessment of how of the incident. Did you already decide to conduct an investigation before speaking to the minister? It's important to know that internally there were communications done within Via Rail, and we had identified gaps that we immediately addressed, and one of those was to find out exactly what happened that led to this event. Unfortunately, those passengers stayed aboard that train for far too long. Mr. Pelletin, I understand this talk of procedures and protocols. But once again, I need to tell you this. When incidents arise where human beings are in play, it's unacceptable that you had no communications with the Minister of Transport on that same day, that you did not pick up the phone to talk with the minister, that the minister didn't take the time when he saw that in the news to talk with you in order to see if there was something he could do to deploy resources on the ground and all the necessary resources to help these passengers when they were in trouble in the 48 hours following the incident. Do you believe that one lesson learned could be that additional effort should be deployed and that somebody could call you directly on your phone when there's this kind of incident where a train is immobilized for this long on a railway? Thank you for the question. Yes, Via Rail executives are available at all times to take calls or other forms of communication. And when were you notified? Thank you, Mr. Berthold. Unfortunately, you're out of time. We're going to now go with Ms. Koutrakis. Ms. Koutrakis, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, witnesses. This isn't the first time that you've been here, and I wish you welcome.
All passenger transportation companies have unfortunate situations several times a year, whether that affect the passengers and the public and employees, and they have plans to deal with all kinds of such situations. I know Via Rail has dealt with numerous, probably hundreds of such incidents over the years, from accidents to suicides, trains or infrastructure failures, freight train derailments, to medical emergencies, terrorism, etc. My understanding is that procedures require an immediate mobilization of everyone who can contribute to be part of the emergency team required to resolve or mitigate the problem. I also know that Via Rail has been a leader in customer service, including recovering from such incidents, and is rated by customers as providing superior customer satisfaction, and that is objectively measured. Is my introduction not true? Are my assumptions not correct? So if my assumptions are correct, I'd like to know what went wrong.
Thank you for the question. Your introduction is accurate. What happened on the 31st of August is important to note is an isolated incident. We deal with situations, as you point out, regularly because we operate on a network of over 20,000 kilometers across the country, mixed traffic, and so on. So absolutely, every day we deal efficiently with all types of situations. To discuss a little bit about what we've discovered so far that went wrong on that day, I'd like to pass the microphone over to my colleague, Madame Toporowski.
Thank you. And Thank you, and if I may, just to begin, I wish to apologize to the passengers that were unfortunately held on that train for much too long that particular day on August 31st. Having said that, I would like to address what we found, what we've discovered. Since 2022, we did learn some lessons. Very specifically, we realized that we needed to take better care of the passengers on board the trains, to take a look at what our protocols were with alternate transportation, to make sure that we were visible, offering food and water on board the trains, as an example. Those protocols were maintained and held. Although the communication on board the train was frequent, the unfortunate part was the information regarding where the rescue would happen and what time it would happen was lacking, and that's what caused a lot of the issue on board the train.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
Yes.
it almost sounds like what happened in December. In your testimony, Mr. Péloquin, you mentioned that. So if that was the issue back then, how can it be that such a short while later we're still dealing with the same things? And that's communication. I'd like to know what broke down, if there were new protocols in place and new communications, what happened this time around?
If I,
Go ahead.
okay, if I may continue, thank you. Related to the communication, we do have a protocol in place in terms of escalation. That's where the failure was. The team that was working on the problem, as Mr. Péloquin mentioned earlier, this incident was an isolated incident. It was unique in that we had two mechanical failures on the same train. The first mechanical failure took about 2 hours to fix, at which point the train started to move again. After moving about 30 minutes or so, there was a secondary mechanical failure. So having addressed the first one, the team had to move its mindset to solving the second one. The problem solving was around what could we do to fix that train to move it as quickly as possible. We did make calls to look for alternate transportation. We actually contacted 10 bus companies. None were available. We actually were in contact with CN throughout the whole, and during those kinds of incidents, we work well with them in terms of trying to come up with solutions. They did offer an opportunity to move the train as well. Our train was closer and a better opportunity to move that train in the future. The communication, as I mentioned, what happened was that we were trying to solve the problem to move the passengers as quickly as possible. The failure was in not escalating as quickly as we needed to.
I'm concerned about the new train. I mean, these are fairly new that were purchased from Siemens. Has Siemens been helping to resolve this issue? Have they been responsive? I mean, you know, we've paid a lot of money. The Canadian people, taxpayers' money, and passengers who pay for the service have paid a lot of money for those new cars. Is Siemens covering the costs incurred by VIA to address the disruption and the resolution of the technical problem? And are you satisfied with their responsiveness? I think it would be important to address that issue with the Canadian people who are watching us today.
Thank you for that question. Absolutely, the team at Siemens, both the local team that is helping us commission the new trains right now that we're receiving at a rate of 1 a month and sometimes 2, is local in Montreal, and the team of engineers and so on in Sacramento also is supporting us every day. With this incident, it's important to note that although we identified what the first cause of the mechanical failure was, we're working closely with Siemens to identify all the other aspects of the secondary cause that caused the locomotive engine to actually shut down, which caused the more significant delay afterwards. But I can tell you that they are working in collaboration with us, and they're helping us discover all the mechanical aspects of this failure.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Koutrakis. Prochainement, nous avons M.
Thank you,
Barcelou.
Ms. Koutrakis. Next up, we have Mr. Barcelou-Duval. You have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, witnesses, for being here with us today. I think that this was beyond necessary to have you with us today. In the wake of what happened on Labor Day weekend, it was unacceptable, as you said. I was shocked when I learned this by reading the news because I said, there's no way, not again. In December 2022, people who stayed on the train for a long time were stuck there. That was obviously unacceptable, and now we can see the same thing happening again. And I'm going to read a statement from Via Rail on January 2023. The interpreters do not have a copy of the statement. You said that beyond having met the expectations of our clients, we have not met our own standards, and it is clear that we have learned lessons from these events, and changes will happen. In December 2022, we had an immobilized train, lack of communication, lack of food, no bathrooms, and a 3-hour trip that became a 14-hour trip. In September 2024, an immobilized train, no communication, no bathrooms didn't work, no water, lack of food, and train immobilized for almost 10 hours. I have a feeling that nothing changed. Can you explain? Thank you for the question. These are two completely different situations. One was caused by an ice storm. Just to say the context was a little different. The 401 wasn't far off, and the 401 was closed. So it was harder to bring emergency services there. So the train was immobilized. A tree had fallen on the rail, and there was a derailment. And these are very different circumstances than what we have seen a month ago, or rather a few weeks ago, should I say. In this case, the train was immobilized. And within 2 hours, there were some repairs made, and then the train could start working once again. And at that point, we had no reason to believe that there would be another mechanical failure following that. And then, as Ms. Toporowski explained, a few moments after, the locomotive shut down, and then the mechanical team looked at what failed at that point and to see what they could do beyond that. I understand what you're saying. These incidents are different. On the one hand, in 2022, the tree had fallen. There was a snowstorm. In 2024, you were in an accessible area where I believe that it would be easy to get people off the train onto a bus and get them to their final destination. And despite that, they stayed for 10 hours on the train. I understand that you could not anticipate the second problem, but that is something that added a lot of hours. There were a lot of time that went by in that period of time. Obviously, this train trip should not have lasted that long. If I was one of those passengers stuck in a metal box for hours on end, and you can't leave, you're lacking food, you can't go to the bathroom, at one point, this is something that stresses people out, and you are waiting for answers at that point. And I do believe that the lack of communication at the time was mirrored in recent weeks. According to media reports, people felt like they had no information, that they were abandoned. I don't know if there was a question. I'm trying to understand, how will you improve your communications? Because I think that there's clearly a communications issue with train goers. I'll give Ms. Toporowski the floor, but I just wanted to add a few more details. According to the because of the mechanical failures, it's important to state that there was a current failure, and that lasted less than 2 hours, and the bathrooms and AC rely on electricity to work. There was a power shutdown, so there was that period of 90 minutes where there no AC and no bathrooms, but for the remainder of that time, the bathrooms and the AC were working. Just to add a bit more information to what Mr. Péloquin just said.
Second mechanical issue that happened, passengers were offered food throughout. We have emergency snacks on board the train the whole time until they were actually depleted. Water was available the whole time except for a short portion of the time during which the power was out. Otherwise, water was offered as well. Notwithstanding that, the length of the delay was completely unacceptable from a passenger perspective. And you're right, being stuck in something for that length of time increases level of anxiety. The communication with the passengers was frequent. The issue was with the information that was actually being shared wasn't satisfactory in terms of where the solution was going to come from. Even when the solution came to move the train backwards, to get it to an area where we deemed it to be safe to start the rescue onto another train, it took about an hour. The transfer of passengers from one train to the next took about another hour, after which point they moved to Quebec City. So there were chunks of time. The failure from a pure communication, from what I see, is our ability to actually internally escalate to continue trying to solve the problem in one case, and then on a separate case saying, what can we do creatively to get emergency services or somebody else involved to support?
Thank you.
And that's where I think the escalation was what was missing.
Thank you, Ms. Toporowski, and merci, Mr. Barce-Duval. Next, we have Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Bachrach, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the team from Via Rail for being here. As I was listening to the responses and questions from my colleagues, I was just thinking about what it must have been like for those passengers on the train for 10 hours, not knowing what the outcome was going to be, an incredibly frustrating situation, to say the least, probably scary for some of them. And I appreciate that there's been an apology, and I also can understand why there might be frustration out there that this is the second incident in a short period of time. And so passengers want the confidence that these problems are being worked out and that they can ride the train knowing that if something goes wrong, there's an effective plan in place. So I look forward to hearing what that plan will be. And I also appreciate the team from Via Rail for reaching out and briefing me on the specific circumstances of Train 622. Now, Mr. Pelican, in your remarks, you mentioned immediate corrective measures, and of those, a lot of them seem like things that were probably also taken after the 2022 incident, reviewing training requirements, revising communications protocols, examining what happened. Those are things that I would hope every company faced with a similar situation would do. The one that stands out as being somewhat different is the decision to evacuate if feasible. Is this a significant departure from past protocols that Via Rail has had?
Thank you for the question. And I would start with saying that I fully agree with you that the length of time that the people were on board is unacceptable, and the entire executive and the board agrees that this is the case. And that's why we apologized. We didn't follow due process to make sure that we looked after our passengers in the correct way. So when I said the immediate actions that we put in place already, some of them may sound like a repeat of 2022, but I can assure you that it's a step up from those things, because we learned from what happened on August 31st, and we looked at what we had done in 2022 and said, what else can we do? So the evacuation process is new. We put it in place immediately after, because as Madame Toporowski explained, it's normal when you have a mechanical failure that a lot of people focus on trying to fix that and trying to bring the train to destination. We now have a new protocol in place that as soon as we have, before there's a length of time of delay, as soon as we have an unusual situation, a mechanical failure or other, we will convene the executives together and have a conversation about what happened, what we're finding out in real time, and make a quick decision to evacuate the passengers if it looks like we cannot get them to destination in a reasonable period of time. That's brand new. We've never done that before in such an organized way, and this is now the process that we have in place.
Was the feeling that if that protocol had been in place when this incident occurred, that passengers could have been evacuated feasibly, given the proximity of the highway, as Mr. Berthold described?
Yes, thank you for that clarification question. We would have taken steps if the communication protocol had worked properly. We would have made arrangements quicker. However, it's important to note that where the train was actually stopped was not a safe location to evacuate because the rail bed is elevated. There was a small forest. Although the highway wasn't very far, there's a forest, and we have a lot of people with different mobility abilities on the train. We need to move the train to a safe location where we can do the evacuation or the transfer in the case of August 31st while keeping the passengers safe.
Mr. Pelican, you mentioned that 10 hours is unacceptable. I think everyone around the table agrees with you on that. My question is, what would be an acceptable amount of time, given that trains are going to break down? Via Rail operates over thousands of kilometers of track across the country. In the corridor between Toronto and Quebec City, if you were to manage people's expectations, what would be an acceptable or reasonable expectation for an incident response time on the corridor?
Thank you for the question. Of course, every situation is going to be very different, so we can't really point at a number of minutes or hours, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Typically, we handle situations very efficiently, and the train continues on journey to destination, and sometimes we evacuate people off of trains. If there's a freight train derailment, for example, in front of our train, we'll take measures right away because we know that it's going to take a long time to reopen the track. So it really depends on the situation. Some of them we can see that within an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, the track will be passable again. In others, like in this case, we didn't know and we should have done something different.
I know I only have a few seconds left. My last question is around the procurement of the new long-distance fleet. And given that that fleet operates in much more remote areas than the corridor across the country, will the design specifications provide for operation of the toilets, provision of water for extended periods well beyond what the Siemens fleet on the corridor currently allows for?
Thank you for that question. Of course, the design of the new cars that we're going to buy for the long distance is not completed at this point, and any lessons that we learn from this event, of course, will be brought into the design of the new cars and working with manufacturers to make sure that on long-distance trains, we will provide all the safety and the comfort that people expect for a longer period of time.
Merci beaucoup, Mr. Péloquin. Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. Before I turn it over to Mr. Lawrence, the interpreters have asked kindly if you could please speak louder into the microphones, just so they can hear and translate properly. Thank you. Mr. Lawrence, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pelican, I know you to be a upfront, straightforward rail professional, and I appreciate your contriteness here today. I do have some tough questions, as I think the situation demands that I ask. The first of which is, prior to this incident, when was the last time you talked to Minister Rodriguez?
Thank you for the question. The last time I talked with Minister Rodriguez was in shortly after he was named Minister of Transport last year.
In, I believe, June of 2023 or July of 2023.
Yeah, from memory, it's July, August of 2023.
Thank you. Have you ever discussed with Mr. Rodriguez, Minister Rodriguez or former Minister Rodriguez, what happened in Cobourg and the delay there and the protocols you've put in place to help prevent this in the future?
I did not have conversations with the minister very often, but I do have regular conversations with the deputy minister and other officials at Transport Canada.
Okay. And when was and I just want to clear, I know Mr. Berthold asked this, but I want to just clarify. When was the first time that the minister or the minister's office contacted VIA with respect to this situation?
The minister's office responded on Sunday early afternoon, and I had a call organized with the minister for Tuesday at 12:30.
And so he didn't contact your office, VIA contacted his office, is that correct?
Yes, we alerted, as per our arrangements with Transport, we contacted different officials in the ministry, and we made them aware of the situation around 6:50 on Saturday evening.
So we have, which is to me, and as has been spoken around, a very difficult situation, really, and as you have said, an unacceptable situation, particularly where Cobourg, of course, is in my riding, and that happened not but a couple years before during Christmas. We were supposed to put in protocols that were to stop that, and we had it repeat again. I think that's fair. You contrasted a little bit between the Cobourg and Quebec incidents, but I would actually say that the Quebec incident is far worse because while an ice storm may not be predictable, certainly a mechanical failure of a train is something that will happen and will happen again. And you were unwilling to answer my colleague Mr. Bachrach's question with respect to the hours it would be. And I understand that every hour will be different, but if not now, could you commit to in the future saying the max amount of time would be 5 hours, or even commit to the fact that there will always be enough food and water on a via train that should a delay happen, that this will not be repeated again, that for no period will Canadians be without food or water?
Thank you for that question. As we've mentioned a couple of times, we are investigating now with an independent team as well the events of that day, and I'm sure we're going to get good recommendations from that. As far as food on board, after the December 2022 events, we stocked the train with emergency supplies, as Madame Toporowski explained a moment ago. So we did have those emergency supplies and additional water on the train that we deployed as per the lessons learned from 2022. Unfortunately, there's not enough to last forever, and we even ordered supplies from outside to come and supply the train at that time.
Mr. Péloquin, sorry to cut you off there, and I'm going to stop the... I don't think that we have translation in French. Est-ce que c'est vrai, Monsieur Barcelouval? So we're going to wait just to confirm that we do have translation, and then we'll restart the clock. You have 1 minute and 10 seconds left.
To the interpretation, would you mind to just talk?
So what we're going to do, colleagues, we're going to suspend for 5 minutes until we rectify the situation with translations. This meeting is suspended. Thank you all for your patience. Mr. Lawrence, you had 1 minute and 10 seconds left. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. And the challenge I have, Mr. Peliquin, is that this is a recurring issue. We have had an incident in Cobourg and now an issue in Quebec. You, in addition, over the time that Prime Minister Trudeau has been in office, if he has received nearly $8 billion, he has received nearly $8 billion. Your executives will receive, on average, $1.1 million this year. You are doing very well as an organization, but Canadians continue to suffer. Is there, and now we hear that the Minister of Transportation contacted you only once prior to this and then several days afterwards. This is not acceptable, and unfortunately this Liberal government's response is to now have a part-time transportation minister. So my question to the government is, when will they take transportation seriously? But my question to you is, what can you offer to Canadians to tell them that we won't see this happen a third time, where Canadians are stranded with limited food, limited water for 10 hours?
Thank you for the question. It's important to note that this is an isolated incident. We have about 20,000 train starts every year. 80% of those train trips arrive on time or within 30 minutes of their scheduled arrival time. So this is a very isolated incident. As far as making sure that this does not happen again, the measures that we've highlighted earlier will go a long way to ensure it doesn't happen again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Prochainement, nous avons Monsieur Iacono. Monsieur Iacono, la parole est à vous.
Next up, we have Mr. Iacono. You have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank all the team from Via Rail for being with us here this afternoon. When Via Rail representatives came before, the interim CEO of Via Rail, Martin Landry, appeared before the committee in January, and I believe you were there as well, Mrs. Toporowski. They said that Via Rail must learn lessons from what happened of these events in order to adjust protocols. So you had protocols. There were protocols for the 2024 incident. So I'd like to know, were there any protocols, rather, from December 2022? Were there any changes in protocol between 2022 and now? And if so, through you, Mr. Chair, can you provide us a list of all protocols that you have and the changes to such protocols since December 24th, 2022? Is that the case? Do you have the changes of the protocols? You have protocols, right? Thank you for the question. And the short answer is yes. And to your knowledge, were these protocols applied to train 6/2022 on August 31st, 2024? Thank you for the clarification. And as you noted, Ms. Toporowski was there at the time, so I'll give her the floor to answer this question. Thank you, Mr. Iacono.
Different and improved protocols since December 2022. They were in place. They were related to food, water, treatment of passengers on board the train.
Sorry to cut you.
Sorry?
I only have 5 minutes.
That's
What
all right.
I'd like is if you can provide us also on that list the protocols that were followed for this incident that you've had that were set in as of December. Also, I'd like to know the staff, Via Rail staff, did they follow the protocols, and which are the protocols they're supposed to follow? So I would like to say, in overall, you have a lot of protocols for different people on board, for different staff, for different employees, being it at the train station, at the control station, everywhere. So I'd like to get, à travers vous, Monsieur le Président, a readout of those protocols, and also a highlight to know if those protocols were followed. Another question. Do you keep a log of all actions undertaken in due course of an emergency?
Thank you for the question. We have a control center that is the center that takes care of all the communications and all the events that happen on Via Rail.
Thank you. Péloquin, donc, je demande aussi, à travers vous,
Thank you, Mr. Péloquin. So I'd like to ask you, Mr. Péloquin, through you, Mr. Chair, if Via Rail can give us this control log of all activities, all calls, all actions taken that day over the course of the event, if possible. Next question.
called when an incident occurs. Who is the first person that gets called?
Thank you for this. Depending on what the type of event is, there are different escalation processes. So in this case, of course, as the problem escalates, different people get involved until the chief of that division, Madame Toporowski, is alerted, and then she alerts me.
Okay. And after you are alerted by her, what else? What's the next? Who else gets alerted?
There are parallel protocols that are in place. So or before Madame Toporowski gets advised, there's another protocol that advised the Situation Center at Transport Canada, so that they know that there are things that are happening that are not normal. And I advise the Office of the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the Board of the Via Rail.
Is the Chief of Police advised?
The Chief of Police is involved in those protocols, and they are aware.
If and when is he advised?
I'll ask you to answer.
If I may, when there is a disruption, the initial call goes to our Operations Control Center. They assemble the right team of people that are involved in it, be it from a police perspective, railway operations perspective, customer experience perspective, in order to actually solve the problem.
So why did it take so long for some action to be taken? So if you're saying that certain protocols were followed, the right people were advised, so why did it take so long before some action occurred over close to 6 hours? So you have a control center. What did the control center do? What is established at that point? I know this is going to come out from your protocols, but we'd like to hear. Do you have a crisis operations center that takes place right away?
The Operations Control Center receives the information, and based on the type of incident, actually triages and depends on who is involved in it and what needs to be happening to solve the problem. This particular... Thank you.
Sorry, we're already
It's okay.
over time. My apologies. Perhaps you can finish that the next time that Mr. Iachino has the floor, or when I pass the floor over to Mr. Barcelou-Duval. Mr. Barcelou-Duval, à vous la parole. Vous avez 2 minutes et demie.
Mr. Barcelou-Duval, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Up until now, we've talked a lot about the long delay of train 622, this exceptional delay. But there are also 2 trains that were affected by delays, train number 26 for an hour and a half, and train 24 for 5 hours and 45 minutes. And based on the reports in the media that I've read, I saw that the people in that train 24, in 5 hours and 45 minutes, only were able to get a bag of pretzels and a bottle of water. Do you believe that this is normal? And if not, don't you have a protocol in place to ensure that a meal is served after a certain period of time? Because, 5 hours and 45 minutes on a bag of pretzels is a rather long time. This is Ms. Toporowski's field. Thank you, Mr. Barcelou-Duval.
In terms of continuing with our service so that it's accessible to everybody, be it in business class or economy class. After 45 minutes, we provide either protein bars, pretzels, and or cookies, which we have as emergency snacks on board. And every 45 minutes afterwards, we do the same thing to replenish along with water. And that's what the protocol was for train 24 and 26, given the delays that they actually had. That was adhered to.
Donc, il n'y a pas eu de repas sur le train 24. Il y a eu des sacs de pretzels.
So there were no meals, there were bags of pretzels every 45 minutes. Is that what you're saying?
Currently on the train, that continued to be offered during the delay.
Moi, je trouve ça particulier, mais c'est...
I find that unique, but if that's how you managed it, let's leave it be then. At 1 p.m., that means that if you take 1 p.m. and add 5 hours, 45 minutes, that's 6:45 at night. I think that a couple bags of pretzels wouldn't be enough for me. It would be difficult. And I think there are people who have health conditions that are in less better health than I am, or different states of health. And I hope that you'll do better next time. How much time do I have left? 20 seconds? Okay. I'll try to give that time back.
Yours, you have 2.5 minutes, sir.
Mr. Chair. One of the similarities between what happened in December of 2022 and what happened recently in August was the holiday weekend. They both occurred on holiday weekends. And I'm wondering whether the availability of staff on a holiday weekend had any impact on Via Rail's response.
Thank you for that question. And of course, we're aware that during holiday weekends, people have a tendency to take a holiday weekend. Our staff complement is not reduced, so the Operations Control Center is functioning as usual, and of course on-board trains and so on functions as usual. So for the people that are involved in the operation of the railway, there's really no difference.
I know in this situation, you sent a train from Ottawa that was eventually able to tow the broken down train. And in talking to folks who are familiar with the European rail system, I know in the UK, they actually station surplus locomotives along the rail line at certain intervals, specifically for that purpose, as rescue locomotives. Is that an option that Canada should look at, particularly for the corridor where there's a higher frequency of traffic?
Thank you for that. We operate a very different type of system in North America, but in Canada than you would see anywhere in Europe. We don't have a supplement of locomotives that we could store all over the country in case of an emergency. So we use the majority of the rolling stock that we have every day.
How many seconds do I have, Mr. Chair? 50? Okay. I guess the other question is around, in this case, there are also CN Rail has freight trains running on the same tracks. I've discussed with your team the potential for CN to provide assistance in a situation like this. I know in a maritime environment, there's actually a legal requirement to go to the aid of mariners who are in distress. Should Transport Canada look at a similar regulatory framework? And I say this knowing that CN is often cooperative and wants to help get you out of the way because they need to get by. But should there be a more formal regulatory requirement for other rail users to come to the assistance of broken down trains?
15-second response, please.
Thank you for that question. I can tell you that over the 150 years or so that the railways have been operating in Canada, there's never been an issue where a railroad did not offer assistance when another railroad had a problem, no matter what the branding was on the side of the locomotive.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. Next, we have Mr. Muse. Mr. Muse, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to direct my questions to Ms. Toporowski, who I know is back again. We had you here in January of 2023 when we had the first incident of December 2022 of the train in that was stopped for 14 hours near Cobourg. And I want to delve a bit further and probably get a bit granular on the issue of the lack of food and water, just because, while we've heard here that maybe that was just a slight blip, that's certainly contrast to what we've heard from passengers in stories in the media. And we're going to have passengers here before this committee as well, so I'm sure we'll hear directly some accounts. But I want to read back a couple sentences of what you said when I asked that question about protocols for food and water back on January 23rd, 2023. And you said, it's based on the number of passengers, but over and above that, we add X% of the number of meals, extra snacks, extra drinks, and so forth. In addition to that, because of our experience over many years, we have dried emergency snacks in case of emergency event, and there's an unexpected delay. In addition to that, we also board additional cases of water. So given that, what was the percent in December 22? What was the percent in August of 2024? And what does it need to be? It sounds like it's not enough.
Thank you for the question, Mr. MP Muse. I can provide the information regarding the ratios back in 2022 and for the current ratios now. I don't have them currently available to share with you right now. The emergency snacks were available. There were 3 different types that were made available. The difference is the way we handed them out. There is food on board the train, which we actually depleted completely as we continued service, and then whatever was left we actually gave out as well. There was also pizza that was ordered and delivered, and that's a difference as well. We tried to make it available the minute we knew that we were running out of food, and we were making a point of trying to determine where we could move that train to that would be safe. We called ahead to a pizza company and basically had them deliver to the train in Laurier so we could offer more food when we achieved, when we were able to get to that location.
You know, so to Mr. Peliquin, you know, apologies and obviously the discussion here and you know, being contrite are one thing, but I guess what is the plan to restore the public trust? Because, you know, if you're a regular passenger of VIA or even the general public, I mean, you know, this is now second time. 3 strikes, you're out. So what is the plan to restore that public trust?
Thank you for that question. I want to start by saying that really this is an isolated incident because we have 20,000 train starts every year, and the majority of those are at the satisfaction of the clients that travel by train. And those customers keep coming back on our trains. So I wouldn't say that the confidence of the traveling public is not there. Of course, this event is unacceptable. Although isolated, it's something that we are addressing very seriously, and we want to make sure that it does not happen again. So we're taking measures. We talked about supplies of food, supplies of water, but if we take the measures that we've taken now to make sure that this does not happen, means that it doesn't happen, then the supplies of additional food and so on become moot at that point.
You talked about the communications revision of the communications protocols with Transport Canada, and so maybe you can get into a bit more detail as to what has changed since December of 2022. And I know the investigation is ongoing, but what would you anticipate needs to change further?
Thank you for that. So the protocol, the official protocol to notify the Situation Center at Transport Canada is that the Operations Control Center is to notify Transport Canada if there's an event that is not usual. Train delays, significant train delays, collisions, incident, accidents, and so on. I have discussed with the Deputy Minister that I would personally advise him, and we have, you know, either myself or another colleague advise the Office of the Minister if there's any situation that is abnormal. That is above and beyond what we had agreed to before, you know, a few years ago.
Merci beaucoup, Mr. Péloquin. Next, we have Mr. Badaway. Yours, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I do want to comment on the comment that Mr. Lawrence made about us taking it serious. You can be rest assured that Transport Canada has a culture within the department to take every situation like this seriously. Phil, you know me better than that. You know me very well, and we take it very serious. Folks, this is 2024. These things shouldn't happen in 2024. Simply unacceptable. And I know, Mr. Péloquin, that you've had discussions with Minister Rodriguez, and he asked that an independent investigation on the incident occur, be underway, as well as within 30 days to come back with an emergency management plan. What's the status of that work?
Thank you for that question. And you're absolutely right. It's unacceptable. And although an isolated incident, one is too many. So we fully agree with that. I did have a conversation with the minister on the Tuesday after the long weekend, and shortly after that received a letter indicating what he wanted, actions he wanted Via Rail to perform in an urgent manner. and we're to respond within 30 days, as you highlighted. We've already provided an interim response to that letter. So within 2 weeks, we prepared an interim response that highlights the actions that we've already taken, and we're working through the independent investigation under Mr. Lavoie's leadership to provide a full response within the timeline.
And I apologize, I have 5 minutes. I'm trying to get to this, and ultimately the expectation of this committee, because the questions I'm asking are for them, so that they can get this into the report, and therefore we can come up with some solutions so that this doesn't happen again, working with you folks and other partners. So I would request that the investigation report, as well as the emergency management plan, be submitted to committee as part of your testimony, so that therefore we can actually put it into the final report. Second question is with respect to improving the way you communicate with your passengers. This is all about the client, the customer, on trains and providing basic care, et cetera, with respect to major service disruptions. Getting granular. I don't have time to dance on this, so getting granular. Mario, what are you doing better now versus what you were doing then?
Thank you for that. And you know, the actions that we've put in place already will go a long way to make sure that we don't have to deal with consequences later, right? So if we now have a protocol for communications internally so that the executives know right away when there's a situation that is abnormal, that will allow us to not wait for the protocol to go through, but to take quicker action to make sure that we look after our passengers in real time. Also, we're looking at all the other aspects of what we can do faster and better so that we don't have to deal with a situation where passengers are on a train for 10 hours.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm going to get, and this might seem like somewhat of a digression, but it's not. It is relevant. We are in the process of building an HFR and HSR dedicated track, as you're well aware. And of course, having a track that's dedicated to cargo versus people would have helped out, especially in the disruption that not only that you gave people, but the disruption that you have with respect to the supply chains vis-a-vis CN, in this case, CN Rail. You know, one of the reasons why we're looking at a supply chain and logistics strategy is to integrate the different methods of transportation, being water, rail, road, and air. And this is part of the reason why. So my next question is, how are you working with CN and CP? And it goes to Mr. Baccarat's questions as well, because they're very relevant. How are you working with CN and CP Rail to, one, prevent disruptions in supply chains, two, dealing with this situation directly, and I don't have to repeat what that situation is, three, looking at the ability to work with CN and CP to have those the redundancy available so that that train could have been moved quicker onto a siding, and then therefore dealt with the folks that were there, as well as opening up the track for supply chains.
Yes, thank you for that. And of course, when we run on a freight railroad, they're very aware of the situation because they are the railroad, the host that controls train movement. So when we're blocking their track, in that case, it's a single track, it can have an impact on the logistics moving freight traffic around, right? So we work very closely together. As Madame Toporowski explained a moment ago, they did offer to help with the situation by pushing our train out of the way, but train number 24 was arriving at about the same time at that location, and we chose the option of using our train because they can connect easier. It's a seamless connection, and they can provide power to the disabled train. So for us, that was a better option, given that it was the same time frame. But I can assure you that we work in close collaboration with CN or CP or GO Transit, Metrolinx, and so on at all times to make sure that there's no impediment to either freight traffic or passenger traffic as much as possible.
With respect to compensation, compensation to the passengers, can you clarify the level of compensation passengers are entitled to when this incident occurs? And I'll expand it to ask that what compensation would be actually added to the cargo that's expected to move on that track. And because of the situation, the time that's lapsed of that cargo getting to its final destination. So compensation for passengers and compensation for those that are held up because of the train taking up the space on the track.
Yes, so So we have a compensation protocol, and on the day of the event, we fully refunded the passengers on train 622. Also, we gave them a full credit for their trip. The passengers on train 24 and 26 got partial credit because they were disrupted on their trip. We haven't had conversations with CN Rail as of yet about compensation for potential delays to freight traffic, and I'm not aware to what extent freight trains were delayed. So that's to come later if there's...
Those reports, the investigation results, the updating of the emergency management plan, the communications plan, as well as any compensation that you would otherwise had given to the passengers, as well as that of CN Rail. Thank you.
I'm sure the clerk follows up to obtain those documents.
The interest there, Mr. Pelican, is so we can have it added into the testimony, and therefore it forms part of the report, and we can actually take next steps to make sure that the outcomes that we all expect are undertaken.
Thank you, Mr. Badaway. Next, we'll go to you, Mr. Viss, and I'm going to add 30 seconds onto your time because we add 30 seconds onto Mr. Badaway's time. The floor is yours, sir.
Merci et merci à tous aujourd'hui.
Thank you for everyone for being here. I'm just going to ask for a few points of clarification here. During your testimony, Mr. Péloquin, you said that all gaps must have been identified and quickly corrected. Can you tell us at the time when we expect to receive the results of that internal investigation, and when can we give additional news vis-a-vis the question asked by Mr. Badaway? At the moment, the investigation is still not completed because there are several steps in the investigation to determine what happened exactly on that day. It's a complicated matter. There's a lot of things at play, and we are digging deep into all of those things. In addition, we have an independent inquiry that is underway. We already have results. We've already taken corrective measures. For example, the mechanical aspect of the problem and the mechanical failure is still under investigation, but it will be investigated as quickly as possible. Do you have an estimate, maybe? Mr. Lavoie can chime in here with regard to the independent investigation. Inaudible. When it comes to the investigation, as Mr. Péloquin said, the investigation is underway. In the fall, we will be able to publish findings of this investigation. In January 2023, Mr. Landry appeared before the committee and recognized how important it was to talk about the stress that is caused in passengers. Of course, it is important to understand what happened for passengers, but also the stress that employees went through. Have Via Rail employees been trained, and are they sufficiently equipped to deal with any problems that may arise in incidents like this? Thank you for the question. When we hire people who work on trains, there is a training, and it is a great training. We have comments from people who travel everywhere, and these people say that Via Rail service is better than any other service provider in the industry. We have also ongoing training to help train staff. Our staff on board did incredible work over the course of these events, and that's what some of the passengers who were stuck said. They're not.
I'm a British Columbian. The very few times I've even been able to take Via Rail in my life, because it's a service that just generally doesn't exist in my province. It's been a phenomenal experience. And that leads me to my next question. If you will indulge me for a minute, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this for my constituents. I represent a small town called Lillooet. It's a traditional train hub. And my constituents wanted me to ask you directly, could they get passenger rail service again from Vancouver to Lillooet on to Prince George? I represent many remote Indigenous communities that are fully reliant on trains. What can British Columbians expect from Via Rail to help them, give them a level of service that exists in other parts of Canada?
Thank you for this question. I can say that as the president of Via Rail, I would love to do more to serve more Canadians across the country. So that's the overall answer. Unfortunately, as I've answered another question earlier, I have limited numbers of rail cars and locomotives, and they're all being used right now for the service that we're offering today.
That's too bad, because many people in British Columbia have more experience taking Amtrak down to Bellingham versus Via Rail to communities in Canada. But thank you for recognizing the lack of service that British Columbians receive, but you're understanding that we can do better perhaps in the future. Thank you.
Much, Mr. Viss. Next, we will go online to Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to say welcome to the folks from Via Rail with us today. And I know you've characterized this particular incident as being unacceptable. You've apologized profusely to your passengers, of course, and to everybody publicly. And I know the minister wrote a letter which MP Bellaway referred to, asking you to do a certain number of things, such as an independent investigation, so on, and all that's ongoing. But one of the things I'm curious about is for the passengers, the people that were on the train, or on any of your trains for that matter. What's the level of compensation that passengers are entitled to when this type of incident occurs? And what are your current compensation policies?
Thank you for that question, and I'll hand it over to Madame Toporowski to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Rogers, my apologies. Our compensation policies are based on the degree of the delay, and typically it's either 50% or 100% travel credits for the travel that they were delayed on. In this particular case with train 622, given the extensive delay and conditions and the fact that they were on that train for so long, and there was a level of anxiety, obviously, from our customer side of things, we also offered a 100% refund. Fact that it was unacceptable from a service level perspective and from a well-being perspective.
So, was there any special consideration for people that are either physically challenged and trying to access the trains and so on? Was there any particular kind of compensation for people that might be disabled or need more assistance?
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. And we look at, any kind of delay from our passengers is unacceptable. And once again, I apologize to all the passengers that were on that train. But regardless of what type of passenger they are and who they are, we offer the same level of compensation. If there's additional support that they need on those trains, that's what our onboard staff is actually trained for as well, to offer additional assistance as required.
And I guess following up from that, I'd ask about your complaint mechanism for customers that receive what they consider to be bad service. Obviously, in this case, it was an isolated incident, but terrible service based on the reports that we heard. So how are these complaints being responded to from this particular group of passengers, and I guess in general by Via Rail?
Thank you for that question, and I'll start by saying that we handle every single complaint that we receive personally. We don't send mass letters or anything like that. Interesting fact for that train, and Madame Toporowski will correct me if I'm wrong, but we've received a number of complaints, of course, for that train on that day. We've also received a number of complaints for people that were not on the train. which is interesting. They complain about the service on board the train, but they were not there. But Madame Toporowski can speak to some of the particular complaints that we received and how we handled them.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. We do take all our passenger complaints very seriously, and we do have a mechanism when they come in either via email, voicemail, through our call centers. Sometimes they're mailed directly to Mr. Péloquin, myself, or other executives. They're responded to specifically related to what the issue is that they're addressing. With respect to what happened on August 31st, there were a number of complaints that came in. Notwithstanding the ones that Mr. Péloquin made mention of, there were about 43 complaints we've gotten for passengers on trains 622. They are being responded to. As part of our outreach to find out what happened on those trains, we've actually interviewed 30 passengers as well, at random amongst different cars, to actually find out what the level of service, how we performed in terms of our protocols, which ones were adhered to, which ones, and where they found failings. And we're hoping that with the complaints that were proactively sent into us, as well as those that we're actually going to seek, we'll get better information in terms of what they would look for in the future.
Thank you very much, Ms. Toporowski, and thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. Prochainement.
Thanks, Chair.
Nous avons Monsieur Barcelou-Duval. À vous la parole.
Next up, Mr. Barcelou-Duval, you have the floor for 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to follow up on the question that was mentioned about this being an isolated incident. I would agree with you. This seemed to be an isolated incident indeed. There was the one in 2022. I don't know if there was any other incidents that happened that had this much of a delay. But beyond these unpredictable circumstances that can arise, there is a reputation of Via Rail being late. And when you talk to everyday Canadians and Quebecers, Via Rail is emblematic of being late. And I looked at your reports. In 2011, 91% of the trains were on time. In 2017, 71% were on time. In 2023, 59% were on time. That is a significant decline, and it's only getting worse as time goes by. How do you think you're going to fix this? I understand that Via Rail has a growth plan. Via Rail wants to grow its number of train passengers, and I think I like to take the train, for instance, but when you see that your train is late, often you lose trust in the system, and then you will no longer take the train because you need to get somewhere on time, and you know that the train won't get you there on time. So what do you have to say about that? Could you clarify a question? What are you going to do to fix constant delays? Thank you for the question. As you know, we spoke about this last time we were here. We can control when the train leaves the initial station. And then we use infrastructure that Via Rail doesn't control, so we have no control over how the trains interact with the rail or the other events. So yes, delays can happen, trains can be late, and these are beyond our control. We are talking with railway operators, other trains, for instance, cargo trains and whatnot, but we have to make do with what we have and the infrastructure. Thank you. But it's still pretty crazy. In 2011, there was only 16% of trains that were late. And then in 2017, it was 41% late. We've gone from 16 to 41. That's a gargantuan number. Obviously, there's probably been some heated discussions that happened after that, and there must be a way to fix this because 41% is an unacceptable figure. Yes, thank you for the question. But in Canada, our train system is very different from Switzerland, for example, where they have 99% of trains are on time. Here we have passenger trains and freight trains using the same network, and so there are very complicated interactions at play. Thank you, Mr. Barcelou-Duval. Thank you, Mr. Péloquin.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I liked my colleague, Mr. Viss's earlier line of questioning, and I hope he and I can work together to ensure Via Rail has adequate resources to expand passenger rail, public passenger rail, throughout the country, including the routes that it hasn't had resources to operate over the years. Certainly that would help Northwest BC, where we've seen service reductions over the decades. My question is about the new venture fleet. We've had this situation, obviously, involving the new trains. On Sunday, I took the train to Montreal, and we were stuck in the station for an hour while they figured out some kind of mechanical issue. With a new fleet, obviously, there are going to be adjustments, and there's a period of breaking in the new equipment. But I'm wondering, Mr. Pelican, based on your 40 years working in the rail sector, could you characterize how the transition to the new fleet is going? And are the Siemens train sets working out better, worse, or as expected?
Thank you for that question. So we're about halfway through the fleet reception right now for Via Rail, and it's going very well. The relationship between the supplier of the trains and us is working very well. It's a complex process to receive a train, to test it, commission it, and put it in service. And I can say that the collaboration is great. Having seen light rail, subway in my days in New York, and trains, I would say that it's on par with what we can expect in delivery of new rolling stock.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd like to move a motion. I think it would be really helpful to the committee to hear from the staff on board the train. As one of the groups that were obviously affected. It was challenging for the passengers. I'm sure it was also extremely challenging for the staff. And, as we're doing a kind of a comprehensive survey of this incident, I would like to move a motion that the committee invite representatives from Unifor to appear as part of its study on the August 31st incident involving train 622.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. Any discussion on that? What's that? Was that something we would add on to a meeting, or were you thinking about using the time perhaps? Because we have two passengers appearing. Were you proposing that they would appear for the first hour and the second hour could be Unifor, or are you proposing that we add another meeting on Mr. Bachrach?
I think that would be adequate for sure. We have the passengers appearing. Yeah, we have an existing meeting with the passengers appearing, and if they appear for an hour as a panel and we do a second panel with the employees, I think that would be adequate.
Okay, we've all heard the terms of the motion. Perhaps we'll go to a vote. All those in favor?
You can do that on UC there.
Unanimous consent? Okay, so adopted. Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. We still have two people left here on our list. We'll start off with you, We'll start off with you, Mr. Lawrence. Need another coffee.
Yeah.
5 minutes, please.
Getting to the end of the meeting. Mr. Pelican, I understand that there are lots and thousands of trains that go across your rails, but I am struggling a little bit with your usage of the word isolated. And I'm just going to rattle off some of the reported, and I'm sure there's much more than this, but these are just some that my staff have been able to pull out. 2019, Vale train hits debris delay for 4 hours. 2020, BC pipeline protest delays for fifth day in a row. September 2022, train delayed for 5 hours between Toronto and Windsor, mechanical issues. December 23rd, 2022, trains canceled and delayed for up to 18 hours. October 5th, 2023, train between Ottawa stuck for 6 hours, mechanical issues. October 18th, 2024, trains delayed for hours due to suspicious package. September 1st, 2024, that's our what brings us here today. And so my challenge is here, trains are going to break down. It's a machine. It's going to break down. Weather is going to happen. My challenge here is that we've had numerous incidents, and we're still leaving people stranded for 10 hours with very limited food and water. Can you still, with a straight face, say this is isolated? It's one time.
That question. And I can assure you that it is an isolated incident. We have 20,000 departures every single year, and 80% of those train trips are either on time or within 30 minutes of arrival on time, which is really a good record. Of course, there are events, like you just named a long list, that are outside of our control. A suspicious package left somewhere. We don't want to take any chances with the safety of our employees, our equipment, and the passengers especially.
Thank you. My concern, once again, is not that these happen. It's that there wasn't a plan. Particularly, you're talking about the willingness to unload passengers, which is just coming out now. That didn't come out of the Coburg plan, didn't come out of the other half a dozen things. Is it your evidence today that the passengers should have been evacuated?
Thank you for that. And given what we've discussed a little bit earlier, we put a protocol in place very quickly to ensure that we start evacuation procedures when we think there's a situation that's going to put the passengers on a train for too long a period of time. And it varies depending on the circumstances. So absolutely, we should have, if we had known that it would be that long, we should have evacuated the passengers off that train much, much earlier.
Thank you for that. And my disappointment, and I'm just conveying the disappointment, I think, of Canadians and rail passengers, is that this didn't occur, that this thought process or protocol did not occur many years ago, and could have saved these folks 10 hours and some considerable stress, especially around the holidays, right? Like I mean, you say it's isolated, which diminishes it, but I talked to some of the folks from my riding of the Coburg incident. Being stranded for 18 hours is bad enough, but when you're doing it with your kids, your grandkids, your parents, others expecting you around holiday season, it's extremely stressful. And so it would be my strong suggestion, my recommendation to you that anything above 5 hours is just unacceptable. We have to be able to get to people and get them unloaded within 5 hours, no matter what happens.
Thank you for that. The emergency or the new protocols we've put in place now will ensure that we act quickly and decisively in case of a situation where we believe, not that we know, that we believe that there's going to be a delay that is unacceptable, as was on that day. Much earlier, much faster, we'll make decisions in real time as soon as we're aware of a situation like that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. Pass the floor over to Stéphane, and then I'll turn it over to you. Donc, pour la première fois, de passer la parole.
And for the first time at this committee, we have Mr. Lauzon. You have the floor. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to be on transport for the first time. And let's get started right away, Mr. Péloquin. Delays, stops on Via Rail trains. You've said that this is a recurrent problem that is affecting thousands of passengers every year. Delays are what bother me the most. There are many factors that contribute to these delays and to service interruptions. You spoke of difficult weather, but there's also mechanical failures and other factors. These are things that are very hard to predict. How are you going to incorporate all these unforeseeable circumstances into an action plan? We have a lot of experience operating passenger trains in this mix of trains that covers a network that is 20,000 kilometers long. So we know with this experience what can happen, and we know how severe one event is from compared to the next. So based on that experience, we can decide what kind of measures to take. We can also look at how a service can resume in an acceptable delay. And how are your relations with CN and CP? And there's other rail operators, but how are your relations? Do you have a close relationship with the railway owners because you depend on them in many ways? Yes, we have a very close relationship with these companies. I speak with counterparts in those companies, but there's also within Via Rail people who communicate with our counterparts elsewhere. Companies have differing priorities, and we talk with them to ensure that everyone has an adequate amount, that people are adequately satisfied. You know, we don't own the railways. Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. You do not own the railway for most of the territory. You know that the infrastructure is getting old. I know that you are in constant communication with people in the minister's office, but what is your role when it comes to communicating the importance of investing in rail? Yes, thank you for the question. Indeed, we only own 3% of the rail we operate on, 97% we don't, and our performance on those 3% is excellent. For example, between Montreal and Ottawa, we have an on-time rate of 97%. This is because we can control infrastructure maintenance. In other cases, we can't incentivize these companies to maintain their infrastructure. It's up to them to make these decisions. We work with them in order to minimize unfortunate events. You spoke of one issue, such as train supply. You said that it was possible to bring pizza and food. So if this is possible, could the fact that people could leave be possible given the circumstances? Did you assess that? Yes, that's a good question. We are always doing security assessments for our passengers. It's not always intuitive, but if you come out of a train, that is difficult. Yes, coming out of a train that is on the side of a railway, yes, it can be difficult. If you have a senior, for instance, or somebody who has a reduced mobility, it's hard to walk on the rocks and whatnot. So the easiest way to disembark would be on a platform. But I'll give the floor over to Ms. Toporowski to add.
In this particular case, the pizzas were ordered, but they weren't actually delivered till we were able to move the train to a safe location because it was not deemed to be safe to disembark the passengers at that point in time, nor would it have been a safe location for some food to be delivered. So we had to wait till.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Lauzon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lauzon.
Before we conclude for the day, Mr. Iachino, you wanted to ask for documents to be produced, I believe?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and Mr. Pelican. Glad to hear that you've highlighted today new protocols that you intend to implement after this incident. Can you also add these as well to my previous requests? We'd like to see an evolution and maybe have a better analysis so that our report can highlight that with you. Thank you.
So noted, Mr. Iachino. We will add that to the request to the documents that we would like to have to provide to our analysts, and the clerk will get on that. On behalf of all committee members, we want to thank our witnesses from Via Rail for joining us today. Thank you for your time and for responding to our questions so diligently. With that, this meeting is adjourned.